The next lecture we're going to talk about is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is part of our learning chapter. Um, Learning is a relatively permanent change that occurs that is not due to illness, injury, or maturation, meaning that we don't actually learn to walk. We mature, our muscles mature enough to allow us to walk. What we learn from is experience. Like once we get up and we start walking, we learn that we can get from point A to point B much quicker than if we were crawling or rolling or sitting. So, therefore, we start to learn from the actual experience that surrounds the illness, the injury, or the maturing. We're unable to actually observe learning directly. It happens by what we can observe is what we're doing, but we can't actually observe that learning has occurred because that is a mental process that occurs within the changes in behavior. So we measure the changes that occur in the behaviors, not the actual mental process of learning. So classical conditioning is also called CC, and it's our first type of learning. And basically it's an association between two stimuli. And it was developed by a man by the name of Ivan Pavlov, who came across it kind of in an experiment where he was looking at the digestion of dogs and their salivation. And what he had done is he had cut a small hole in the side of the dog's lower mouth, and he put in a tube, and he was studying how much a dog salivates when food is presented to them. By doing that, he found that associating the food to the dog's salivation, that we had reflexes that occurred, like that a dog every time food was presented would salivate, and therefore there was a reflex of the food, which is the stimulus, to the salivation as the response. So through that, he developed this learning technique. And he said that we had unconditioned or unlearned events. These are things that are innate within us. An unlearned stimulus is an unlearned object, which then will elicit a response to it, which is also called an unconditioned or unlearned response. The unconditioned response is the unlearned action to the object of the US. So, food to salivation. So, every time you present a dog with food, they will salivate to the food. Then he developed that the condition part. Now, the condition part is when a learned object is presented in front of the unlearned stimulus, and then a response is created. So, what he did was he put a bell in front of the food, in front of the salivation, and paired it enough times that he rang the bell, put the food down, dog salivated, rang the bell, put the food down, dog salivated, that eventually the dog salivated when he heard the bell ringing without the food being presented. And that's when he said the learning had occurred. So here is a diagram of how the experiment kind of went. He took the bell initially, and there was no salivation to a bell because the dog doesn't associate a bell with food or with wanting to eat. But then he paired the bell with the food, and the dog started to salivate. He paired it enough times, dog salivated over and over again, till eventually he rang the bell, and the dog salivated to the bell ringing without the food being presented. So within classical conditioning, there's also concepts. The first concept is extinction. So let's say he rang the bell, he put the food down, dog salivated. Great, we've got learning. He rang the bell, dog salivates, rings the bell again, dog salivates, rings the bell again. And the dog's like, "What? I'm never getting fed. You're just ringing a bell and I'm drooling all over the place, but there's never any food presented." Eventually what happens is if you don't present the US in between the CS and the CR connection, it will eventually weaken and then it will disappear. So if you keep ringing a bell and your dog's drooling, but you never actually present the food to the dog is going to eventually lose that connection of the bell is associated with the food that's associated with the salivation. Spontaneous recovery is when the CS to CR connection will reappear after a period of rest. So, you finally broke your dog of the habit of every time a bell rings that they drool all over the place, but then all of a sudden the doorbell rings and the dog starts drooling. That would be spontaneous recovery. And once spontaneous recovery occurs, if you don't continue to present food in between the bell ringing and the salivation, the dog will eventually extinguish the behavior again, or the person. Okay. Generalization is when similar CSs cause the same response. So, for an example, if you use like a red light and then you use an orange light to create learning, or if you give, if a child answers a question and you give them a red M&M and then you give them an orange, Skittles, that they could create the same response, that would be generalization. And discrimination is when they're able to distinguish between CSs. They're able to distinguish the difference between the CSs. So this would be like the red M&M works, but the orange Skittles does not. Okay. So let's try it. So we've got a US, a UR, a CS, and a CR that we're looking for. So early in the relationship, the mere sight of Donna excited Jack. This gradually died out, however, as Donna behaved tolerantly but indifferently. When the relationship ended, Jack was bored with Donna and didn't even think about her for the next year. Now he was surprised at how excited he was becoming as he saw Donna through the window of the bus. So the first thing is that this is a spontaneous recovery. So we have Jack and Donna were together, then they broke up. So he extinguished the behavior, and now all of a sudden he's excited again. So now he has rekindled the romance, and that makes it a spontaneous recovery. It extinguished and now it returned. Now, what is the US, the UR, the CS, and the CR? Well, we have to remember with the US and UR that they are two unlearned things. So it's like an object or a noun. It's like something creates a response or a movement or a verb. Okay. So because of that, we have to think this is something that everybody would do. So not everybody would be excited by Donna. So Donna can't be the US. And excitement can't be the UR if Donna is the US, because not everybody is excited by Donna. But what could be the US to UR? So one of the things that's unlearned innate in all of us is that when we're attracted to something, that we get excited. So the attraction leads to excitement or arousal. So we're making it very general. And then when we get down to the CSCR, it's going to be much more specific. So we've got attraction equals arousal. And then Donna is actually neutral. She's the CS. She's paired. She's a neutral stimulus that gets paired with the US to UR that creates the the learning process to occur. So she is the CS. She is the neutral C that then becomes the CS, conditioned stimulus, and her response would be excitement as well. Normally in this class, because we're going to do the basic connections, the UR and the CR will be the exact same answer. So here, attraction equals arousal, Donna equals arousal, and Jack is experiencing spontaneous recovery. Now let's try another one. In order to be able to punish my cat, even when I'm not near enough to reach him, I have paired the sound of a clicker with getting squirted with water. Now the sound of the clicker makes him startle. So now we have to get into our inner cats. And what do cats not like? Cats don't like water. So we've got water as the US makes the cat startle as the UR. The wooder makes the cat startle. Then we pair the wooder with the clicker. The clicker is the CS. Clicker, wooder, startle. Clicker, wooder, startle. Enough pairings. And the clicker now makes the cat startle. Wooder to startle. Clicker to startle. One more. Let's try another one. The smell of fresh bread baking makes my mouth water. So now we are going to be Pavlov's dogs for a minute as humans. So what makes our mouth water? Well, food makes our mouth water. So the U, remember we want to go general to specific. So the US would be bread baking, would be bread or food. Um, Food makes the mouth water. I would even be more general than bread because some people don't like bread. And I would say food as the US, mouth water as the UR, and then the CS is the smell of the bread, and the CR would be mouth water. So food, mouth water, smell, mouth water. Okay, one more. It's your first day of college. Ah, yes, your first experiences with dorm life. You're standing in the shower, trying to wake up when you hear someone flush the toilet. Then a few seconds later, the shower water turns scoldingly hot. You yell and jump out of the way. After the water temperature returns to normal, you resume the shower, but someone else flushes the toilet. The water gets hot, you jump again. Sooner or later, you begin to jump out of the way as soon as you hear the toilet flush without waiting to get burned. You've been conditioned. What is the US to UR? So the US is going to be hot water, scoldingly hot water. And the UR is going to be jump. Because if you turn on your shower too hot, no matter who it is, they will jump out of the way of the hot water or move backwards away from the hot water. So scoldingly hot to jump is your US to UR connection. And then what did you add? You added the toilet flush. So the CS is the toilet flush, CS paired with the scoldingly hot water, paired with the jumping. Eventually the CS or the toilet flush is creating you to jump. Okay. That is going to be the first part of classical conditioning. When we come back, we'll talk about the second part, which is higher order conditioning and beyond.